post-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week.
Yes.
But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting.
Yes, I see.
By a simple majority in the case of purely internal affairs.
Be quiet.
But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more
Be
major...
quiet. I order you to be quiet. Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look. Just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible. You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Welcome on, and it is that time for Roundtable Live here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Be rolling on till 4 a.m. in the morning Eastern Time. New ideas, different hosts every night, different subjects every night. You never know what's going to happen right here at the Roundtable Live. King Arthur has nothing on us. We're going round and round.
Welcome to That Heart Roundtable. This is Noreen Helphand, and I'm broadcasting to you live from Southern California, where it is 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and on the Revolution.radio website for schedule. For Studio A, the schedule will be 12 a.m. Bordering Monday and Tuesday for this show. For that would be according to Eastern Standard Time. And welcome to Revolution Radio, where we are a listener support station. So basically what that means is if you guys, want to keep this information machine going, let me just type something. I think it should be okay. Yeah, if you want to keep this, hey, this is like one of the premier alternative information venues. Seriously, there are others, but we're pretty up there in our listener scope. So if you want to keep this machine going, donate money. It's probably the most direct way to keep the station going. Whatever you can. It's not like you have to donate $1 million, right? Whatever works, that is the key. Whatever can work for you guys, hey, works for us. Keeps it going. And you can also get products too, if you like. So you can do it that way, donate, get something in return, like the non-GMO heirloom seeds for an organic garden of your size choice, put by Mike Ringley, a station owner, and he's been doing that for a while. Just, hit the site support button, buy Revolution Radio logo items, subscribe to archives like I do, $4.95 a month, and you don't miss shows that you couldn't catch, and that's really cool. I'm gonna be we don't really have let me see, I don't have a Skype number, and we don't really have studio call-in numbers anymore. But I'm not going to even announce that till a little bit later because I have a guest. So I will announce the Skype numbers. If you have Skype, you can call into my show tonight and speak with the guest later on, and that would be fine. So I am really honored to have back with me a guest that I had about a year ago. And she was, I have to say, one of the most, and this is not, seriously, I'm not kidding you. When I say these kind of things, I really, people might say these things often just to be like saying it or whatever. And I have, a round table, so I don't have guests too often. But when I do have, a guest, and I remember most of them, I've had some better than others, no offense. Most of my guests, they've been pretty good. So I'd have to say that this guest is one of the top ones. She made such an impact on this show and on the station when I had her a year ago or so, I can't remember. And she used to have her own show on Revolution Radio. I think it was related to, Radio South Africa. So I want to welcome again Karen Smith. And how are you tonight, Karen?
I'm great. Thank you, Noreen. It's lovely to be on your show again.
No, it really, really is. I mean, I think, yeah, I think it's been about a year. I don't know, something like that. But I think you do recall how that was a very impactful show, wasn't it? I mean, it was, you already had been doing your show on the station, but I just had you come drop by one night anyway, and it was really powerful. And I also hoped, that show, as well as you being on the station, has really been helpful to you, and continues to in however form. I just wanted to say that. But
It does, Noreen, because, there's a great difference between doing your own show and being a guest on someone else's show. And you learn so much from being a guest because you see things from somebody else's point of view, and they ask questions that you maybe had not thought about. So it always makes you think and rethink your stand on issues. It's a great way to freshen your ideas, is to be a guest somewhere else. It's good for you.
yes, I agree. Okay, with that, I know it's been a while since, maybe you've had your show on this station, and there's been a lot of changes since that time. So if pretty much, Karen, I don't have anything overly scripted tonight from my end. And, if you want me to throw you a question, I will, but I'm sure there's much for you to update us on the situation. Let me just preface to the audience, Karen Smith, runs organizations and promotes through media and through her connections and networking, ways in which to empower and assist mainly what you would call people of European descent in South Africa as we speak now, who are basically, I mean, I know there are people of different various we call economic levels. Let's just say generally more poor or working class type people. However, I want to add that recently I heard that even rich people that are white, that happen to be white, that live, in the cities, have to live in like gated communities and have guns. So it's not even that safe for people, white quote people, Caucasian people with money. Basically, they face a lot of dangers living in South Africa. Really briefly, yeah, we can go back to the apartheid era, or even before that, but especially after, because a lot of people don't know that since the disassembling of our apartheid, which is one thing, okay, whether, however you want to look at that for what it is, but as far as the safety and progress of the remaining white people who haven't left South Africa, because some people have, because of the dangers, there's a lot of dangers for them. Well, forget the dangers for a moment. Let's just go, they can't get employment very easily. They're living economically low, many of them in slums, not all, but many. They're always in danger. If they still have a farm, even they could be robbed, raped, and murdered. And the media does not really cover this issue. We know about the global agenda. They're trying to keep this topic low. You can find it on Google, YouTube, or whatever. If you type in, South African white genocide, I know those are pretty extreme terms, but that is more or less what is going on over there, or anything similar to that, oppression of Europeans in South Africa, whatever you want to say, right? I mean, you could find information on what we're about to talk about. And so taking it from, just as I introduced it to the listeners from my end, Karen, I know a lot has happened since we last spoke. So if you want to just go with the flow and whatever comes to your mind about what you want to talk about with this topic, feel free.
I'd like to start from the beginning again, because
Sure.
It has come to my notice recently that many people in America, luckily for us, are now paying attention to the South African situation. Lauren Southern has recently been there and is putting out videos and a full-length documentary on what is going on in South Africa. And Katie Hopkins was there as well. Now, Lauren did it very smartly. She was in and out without much fanfare and was as safe as she could be, given her contacts and the people that she interviewed. Katie, on the other hand, made a huge production about going there. And while she was there, she took on Julius Malema. Now, Julius Malema is a young firebrand. He's the leader of the economic freedom fighters in South Africa. He is a fan of Mugabe and Fidel Castro. He believes that Venezuela, if you can believe this yourself, that Venezuela is a model of how a country should be run. He has told his followers that they have no reason to feel that they are thieves or criminals if they steal from whites, because basically they're just taking back what was theirs to start with. So this young man is a very, very dangerous person to cross swords with. And Katie asked him for an interview, and he ignored her. So she sent out tweets saying, "Is this brave freedom fighter afraid of a little British woman?" Well, the day she tried to leave, which was last week sometime, she was detained at the airport. Her passport was red flagged. She's never allowed to go back to South Africa. And she was very, very lucky not to go to jail, because a jail in South Africa is a horrific place to end up. You will guaranteed get raped in jail, and you will also guaranteed end up with HIV/AIDS. So this lady was very, very lucky that they let her go and go back to Britain. But what I'm telling you this for is to show you how determined the African National Congress government is that the word on South Africa does not get out to the world. So I just want to go back also a little bit into the history of South Africa, because I also learned recently.
Aaron, just really quickly, I didn't want to disrupt you on your rhythm here, but I did remember as you were speaking, and I don't think I brought it up. Before you bring up the history, could you please tell the listenership, especially if they're not familiar with this topic, they might be wondering who's doing the quote, not hiring of, robbing, raping, and killing of the poor or working class, whatever, whites, because people might be asking, is it blacks? Is it the government? Is it the Chinese? I mean, I know it's a
right. No, I understand that.
Yeah, okay.
That is why I wanted to start like this.
Okay, sure.
For people's information, South Africa is not a province or a state of the continent of Africa. South Africa is a country all by itself. It's 1.5 times the size of Texas. It is on the southernmost tip of Africa. It has a population of approximately 70 million people. Getting figures out of the ANC government is absolutely impossible. Now, the population is broken down as follows. 80% or more of the population are black. The black population is made up of 11 to 13 black tribes who by nature war with each other. Historically, they have been at war with each other. However, when the government, the African Nationalist Congress, who is a communist party, when they came into power in 1994 with Nelson Mandela as the president, they started singing songs called Kill the Boer, Kill the White Man. Now, Boer is a direct translation from Afrikaans, which is the white tribe's native language in South Africa. They started singing this song before all parliamentary meetings, before all political meetings. Kill the Boer, kill the white man. One bullet, one settler. And another song that our president sings is, bring me my machine gun. I'm going to shoot the Boers, the rapists, the cowards. We will shoot them. The Congress will shoot them. We will chase them into the sea. Now, anybody in their right mind understands that if a president of a country is singing a song like that, it is an incitement to kill the people. I mean, it cannot be seen any other way. So the people who are in charge of the country are very cleverly, in my opinion, taking these 12 or 13 disparate tribes who would be at war with each other, given their own way, and united them against a common enemy, the white man. Now, I am not saying under any circumstances that the black people in South Africa are not suffering, because they are. Black unemployment in South Africa is above 57%. So their situation is bad. But my concern is that I do not know another country in the world where the majority is protected from a tiny minority by over 120 race-based laws. Now, when the ANC came into power, it was like this. Nelson Mandela had gone to jail for life because he was guilty and pleaded guilty to 150 out of 154 crimes of treason, murder, crimes against the state, terrorism, etc. Only 4 of the charges against him did he dispute, but even then he didn't really put up a defense against those charges. So the nationalist government that was in power at the time did not want to create a martyr out of Nelson Mandela. So what they did was give him a life sentence for his crimes. Now, he had been guilty of orchestrating the bombings of police stations, railway stations, restaurants, and a lot of people had been killed. He came into power in 1994 because by 1982, apartheid had just about been dismantled. Most of those laws had been struck from the books, and South Africa was well on its way to becoming integrated as a black and white society can be, an integrated society. But at that same time, the world turned their eyes upon South Africa, decided that apartheid, which was the same thing as segregation in America, was an absolutely evil thing to do, and they put sanctions against us. At the time that those sanctions were instituted against us in 1972-ish, somewhere around there, we were fighting 2 wars. We were fighting a war on our borders against the communists, Russian and Cuban communists, who were training the ANC and the Namibian people and some of the Rhodesian people on our border with Angola. So we were fighting a war to keep those communists out of South Africa, and we were fighting an internal war against Nelson Mandela's terrorist cronies who were bombing civilians. So it was a very, very difficult time for South Africans, but the world decided that we were bad people and needed sanctions. So they put sanctions against us. And we battled because although South Africans are very creative people, very hardworking people, we have a saying, a boer maak 'n plan, which is a farmer makes a plan. And we made a plan. And we made the country work even with the sanctions. The one thing we did not have is petrol, gas for our cars. Now, you can't fight 2 wars and have an army and an enormous police force without petrol for their vehicles. So those sanctions really, really hurt us because at the same time, Rhodesia was fighting a civil war and we were helping them because they're a landlocked nation and they had sanctions against them as well. So South Africa was helping them in their battle for independence of the black people. So we were having a very, very hard time. In 1992, the Nationalist Party came to the people with a referendum. And the question we were asked was, should we continue to negotiate with the ANC towards a peaceful settlement and power-sharing government? Well, there has never been such a huge turnout for a vote in the history of South Africa, except maybe the one in 1994 when Nelson Mandela was voted president. And it was an overwhelming 85% vote. Yes, we should continue the discussions with the ANC about power sharing and a peaceful settlement. Well, 2 years later, 1994, Nelson Mandela was voted in. No more talk of power sharing, no more talk of a peaceful settlement. Immediately, the white people were disarmed because we had to register our firearms under the Nationalist Party. So when the ANC came into power, they had the gun registration records. They knew where you lived. They knew how many firearms you had. And their thing was, people with a surname starting with A have so many months to hand in their firearms at the local police station. But you can apply for a firearm license under the new government. And when you get it, you'll go to that police station and get your firearm back. So South Africans, being very law-abiding citizens, which they really are, they are incredibly law-abiding people, dutifully handed over their firearms as they were told to do. Some people in South Africa have been waiting 25 years, because that was 25 years ago that the ANC took over. They are still waiting for their firearm license. And those firearms have been disappeared from their lockup in the police stations, sold to criminals. You can even rent a firearm today from a police station in South Africa for about $5 a day. And you can't tell me that a policeman really thinks that if somebody's going to rent a firearm for a day for some lawful purpose. So a lot of whites have been killed with their very own firearms that they dutifully turned in. At the same time, we had, I think you would call it a militia here. It was called the commando system, which was a loose agreement between farmers where they protected each other's farms, because farms in South Africa, due to the harsh conditions and the really difficult farming conditions there, tend to be very big and very isolated. So we had a commando system where the farmers would protect each other's farms. The ANC, in their wisdom, disbanded that system with a promise that they would come to the table and discuss a way to keep the farms safe. Well, that didn't happen either. And I'll go into the results of that later. The other thing that they decided to do was to bring in affirmative action, which most South Africans thought to be relatively fair, because during the Nationalist Party's rule, there were jobs that were reserved for whites, and black people tended to be lower paid and in lower positions than white people. So we all thought that that was a fairly good idea, and they brought in affirmative action. Well, the government decided that wasn't working fast enough. It wasn't bringing enough black people into the workplace. Now, under affirmative action, there was a class of people called previously disadvantaged, and white women fell into that category. So the Indian population, not red Indians like you have in America, Indians from India that had been imported as indentured servants to work in the cane fields in South Africa,
right,
who had obviously gotten their freedom and were now a thriving community. They were in that category of previously disadvantaged people. So a lot of white men lost their jobs. A lot of white women broke through the glass ceiling and became successful. And a lot of Indians got to prosper more and to have better positions under the ANC government. But the ANC government then decided that the companies in South Africa were playing the system and hiring white women instead of black people. So they brought in a process called Black Economic Empowerment. Now, under Black Economic Empowerment, your company had to mirror the demographics of the country. So at every level of your company, so from management down to the person who sweeps the floor, at all levels, you had to have 80% black, 5% Indian, 2% colored, and the remaining 3% could be white people. So in order to comply with that law, hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of white people lost their jobs. Now, with that law in place, it simply meant that those people would never again get another job in the country. So what happened to them? What happened to them is an absolute travesty of anything that I've ever heard anywhere. Because at that stage, in the early 2000s, there were 50,000 50 million black people in South Africa and an estimated 4.5 million white people. So to protect the 50 million from the 4.5 minority, they had to bring in these laws. They also at that time started talking about farmers having to give 50% of their farms to their black staff, companies having to have a 51% black shareholder. Now, whether that shareholder participated in the company or put money into the company or whatever did not matter to the ANC government. You had to hand over 51% of your business to a black person in order to comply with the BEE rules. Well, that went on for a couple of years, and then they decided this is not working fast enough either. So now we're going to bring in broad-based black economic empowerment. And at that stage about, they declared the Chinese in South Africa as black people. In 2008, they passed a law declaring the Chinese to be black so that they did not have to comply with these laws that apply to everybody else.
That is interesting. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yes, yes. It's weird, but anyway, they did this thing, and at the same time, I lost my train of thought there. Anyway, so they declared the Chinese to be black as well, and broad-based black economic empowerment then meant that every company had a scorecard which is filled in quarterly. So if I'm a printer, if I print books, my supplier of ink and my supplier of paper and my supplier of glue has to be BBE compliant, or I will not get government contracts. Now in South Africa, most of the things are quasi-government or government-owned. The Electricity Commission is government-owned. The telephone system is government-owned. The Water Affairs is government-owned. The TV is government-owned. Just about anything worth anything in South Africa is owned and run by the government. So if you want to get big contracts and do financially viable work, you have to go apply through the government. So companies were at that time told that they may not donate to white charities. Any donations they give must go with the demographics of the country as well. So you can give 80% of your donations to black people, 5% to Indians, 2% to coloreds, which are here called mulattoes, I think. They're a mix between black and white people. They call themselves coloreds, so it's not an insult for me to say that. And so the remainder of that could maybe be given to white charities. So a lot of orphanages had to close down because their funding dried up, and the white children were just left with no help whatsoever. So given that the people who had run the country for the previous 100 or so years had now been out of a job, and black people who were not qualified in any way to do the work were now holding down these well-paid positions, the country started falling apart. The roads were not maintained. The electricity supply, well, they went through 2 years where they had what is called rolling blackouts, where the Electricity Supply Commission would just turn off an area without any warning, and your electricity could be off for 3 days at a time. Now, how do you run a business in those circumstances where your electricity just goes off? Your freezers are off, your lights are off. I mean, the theft in the stores was horrific. The stores had to employ dozens and dozens more security people in order to try and keep the stores open under those conditions. So that was the beginning of the end of the country, because that happened because they had not maintained the power stations. Now, when I was in South Africa, some friends of mine were building power stations. So I've seen them from the ground up being built, and I know how they should look. And I saw photographs of one of the power stations that we had been involved in the building of, and it was ash everywhere. They were coal-burning power stations. They had not cleaned the ash in that power station for 10 years. Now, ash is corrosive, so the pipes in the power station had started corroding and falling to pieces, and nobody had done any maintenance whatsoever. The roads started falling apart. There are potholes in South Africa where, and this is no joke, if you drive your car into that pothole, you'll lose your car. They are so enormous. And the municipalities, the city councils of the towns in South Africa, started putting up notices in the newspaper advising residents how to fix potholes themselves. Because the municipalities are now bankrupt, they've been run into the ground, the money's been stolen, it's been hijacked, it's gone into people's back pockets. And so now it's up to the populace to pay the taxes to fill in the potholes. Everything in the country fell apart. At the same time, our taxes went up, our electricity charges went up 50% in 1 year, which they're about to do again this year, because once more, Eskom is broke. And then we discovered that our government, so we've passed from Nelson Mandela now to Thabo Mbeki, who was ousted by President Zuma, who is our, till today, I'll get to that, I've just read the most amazing article. However, he took the reins in the country, but he was in the intelligence arm of the armed wing of the ANC, and him and his cronies put him into power, ousted Thabo Mbeki, who was a highly educated man, and put President Zuma in his place. Now, President Zuma had never been to school. He learned to read and write from a junior school dropout. He was a goatherd for his father, but he had climbed through the ranks of the ANC in their terrorist wing, their armed forces. And so he had powerful friends. If you hear him today, there are a lot of videos on the internet, on YouTube, where you can hear this man trying to read numbers off of a piece of paper. It's 11, 70, and 5. No, listen properly, South Africa. It was, listen properly, it was 11, how, man? You know, and there are dozens of them out there, of this uneducated man taking over this country that was the breadbasket, the powerhouse of sub-Saharan Africa, and running it into the ground. So the reports came out that this man had spent 200 and something million pounds on building a compound for himself. And the opposition parties tried to take him to court, but it didn't work because everything that they tried got squashed by him. When he was voted in as president, there were more than 800 criminal charges of fraud, theft, even rape against this man. And he became president, and all 800 charges under the carpet. Wow. Yes.
Talk about corruption at the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
My goodness.
Noreen, it is unbelievable what has happened to that country. But there is good news about that. I promise you I will get to it.
Well, of course, yeah. It's important to the listeners to know the history and the progression of, you know, what's been going on, because this is very vital. So thank you. Yes.
Well, you know, people tend to say, Noreen, and I do not mean this badly, but people tend to say that it's karma. We killed thousands of blacks during apartheid, and we deserve what we're getting now. Now, after the ANC came to power, they appointed Archbishop Desmond Tutu to oversee the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was essentially a witch hunt against white Defense Force people and white policemen to prove how wicked they had been during the apartheid era. Now, in their own words, the findings of that committee, run by the ANC, who were desperate to find thousands of black bodies attributable to the white apartheid era. During the entire time of apartheid, there were maybe 700 murders a year. Since apartheid ended in 1994, there have been 35,000 murders reported per year. So in the 20 years that they have been in charge, there have been 500,000, by their own admission, murders in South Africa. But Interpol says that it is probably double that number, because in South Africa you are not allowed to report on black on white crime or murders or those kind of things. And if somebody is murdered, the death certificate will be issued by the government saying they died of natural causes. So there's absolutely no way to tell which figure is correct. So, the figures that I'm giving you are numbers that we think are correct, but we can't know for sure. So in those 25 years that the ANC have been in power, 85,000 white South Africans, men, women, and children, have been tortured and murdered. And most of their deaths are written down as died from natural causes.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, a 57-year-old lady was kidnapped, and she was raped with a broken bottle with a sharpened stick. 8 of her toes were cut off, and all they took from her was a cell phone. So the police say this is robbery gone wrong. I'm sorry, the brutality of these things where they drown children in boiling water and they rape the mother and daughters in front of the father, who is tied up in a chair with his eyelids cut off so he cannot look away. Those things are not robberies gone wrong. They are not opportunistic burglary of your house. This is torture and murder incited by the government, by the politicians in that country. And it's a very, very sad state of affairs. So I'd like to talk to you about what does happen to the white people who now have no jobs and cannot possibly get another one ever in their lifetimes. Mm-hmm. So you imagine you have a good job, you have a mortgage on your house, you have a hire purchase, I don't know what you call it here, when you buy a car on terms, I don't know what you call it in America, we call it hire purchase. So you have an HV on your car, you have a mortgage on your house, your children go to a good school, and you lose your job. So your wife takes over the work, and you stay home and be at home dad and try and find something to do that will make money. And now your wife gets told, well, you're no longer previously disadvantaged, so you're out of the workplace as well. So there's no income for the family. You very soon run through your savings, and the bank repossesses your house and your car, and your children get taken out of the private school where they were a decent, good school and get put in some local school. And eventually, where do you go? Because there is no social services for white people in South Africa. The black people get a child allowance, they get an unemployment allowance, they get all kinds of things, but the white people do not. So you are left with nothing and nowhere to go. A lot of families started putting granny flats in their backyards and having family members stay there. But the government soon put a stop to that and said, you've got squatters on your property. You can't.
I need to interrupt you about this factor. All these things I want to tell the audience, and I'm sure you would concur. This whole systemization that you're explaining is not just like an accidental. Okay, look, there's many good and bad people in South Africa of all races. However, these people, and I'm going to point to the African National Congress, correct, and governments related thereof to, and thus forth, have systematically created a system in order to target, isolate, persecute poor white Africans in this manner, because probably because I'm guessing because of statistical numbers in areas outnumber, quote, whites, but somehow they've taken the legal rights away from the white population there as well. So this is why all this insanity and horrific tragedy has occurred. I mean, I think people need to realize this, because this is not just, isolated crime here. Oh, you turn on the news. Oh, yeah, like they talk about it. Oh, this family got murdered or robbed on their farm. There's low employment rates in this part of town. These are not isolated things. This is a whole system put in place against
legalized. It's in the law that these things must happen.
Yes. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to break your
no.
I think it's very important to point that out, because in some parts of the U.S. or other parts of the world, people might think, well, of course, people are going to be targeted by crime or whatever, but this is beyond that. This is actual systematic persecution, genocide, and so forth of a people. To go on.
Yes, absolutely. There is a very brave Dutch journalist who worked for a very long time in South Africa, and then eventually had to go back to Holland because she was not popular in South Africa for drawing attention to these things. And she spoke many, many, many times to Dr. Gregory Stanton of Genocide Watch. Now, Genocide Watch is a USA-based organization, very, very left-leaning. Gregory Stanton himself marched against apartheid and spoke out everywhere, and every chance he got, he spoke out against apartheid. Well, eventually, she convinced him to come to South Africa. I think the first time he came was 2011. Came to South Africa to report on what was going on there. And he said that South African whites were at enormous risk of genocide. At that time, his organization had set out 8 steps of genocide, dehumanization being one of them, dispossession being another, loss of their culture being another. He said at that time that it was very difficult to place white South Africans on that ladder, but he put us at stage 6 of 8 stages of genocide. 7 being full-on genocide happening, and 8 being the denial stage. And he said, whatever you do, but this was too late for the white South Africans, do not give up your arms. And he also spoke about the inhumanity of the government singing these songs about kill the Boer, kill the farmer, 1 bullet, 1 settler. He spoke about that. Anyway, he promised that he was going to try and make the world pay attention to what was going on in South Africa. Well, even he couldn't manage it. So in 2014, he came back to South Africa to relook at the issue, and he was even more shocked. He specifically mentioned Julius Malema and said if he gets into power, woe betide the whites in South Africa. So this is a government-orchestrated plan. We have some papers of before they came into power, a meeting that they had. And at that meeting, the ANC said that the easiest way to harm a white South African is through his job, his property, and his children. And we are going to take all those things away from him, and he will flee the country. The only problem with that is we cannot flee the country. 1 million white people have left, and I think that is just about as many as can either get visas or can afford to leave, because we cannot immigrate to any other country. They will not give us refugee status because the UN or Amnesty International have to declare you refugees. And if you look at any of their reports on South Africa, they talk about the xenophobic attacks, black on black attacks, but they do not go anywhere near the white farm murders and the urban murders and the persecution of the white people in South Africa. So as far as they are concerned, the Rainbow Nation is a beautiful place to live. Everything's perfect there since 1994. We can now close that chapter, stop looking at South Africa, and move on with our lives.
Now, how many people, did you repeat again, were able to migrate out?
1 million whites left.
Yeah. Okay. But there's still remaining about how many now?
Well, the ANC tell us 3.5 million, but I do not believe it, because I've been watching news on the figures of the white flight from South Africa has become desperate, and more people are trying to get visas than ever before. So, in my opinion, there might be 3 million white people left in South Africa. There might be. But you can never get a real figure out of that country, because the government controls those figures. So we don't know for sure how many there are. But 3 million out of 70 million is a very, very, very small minority of people.
It is. And every time when I had you on the show last year, and then now when you repeat about how people are just tortured, imagine that kind of torture, and then they have to endure this, and they finally die. And the scary thing is the tragedy of that, but then also the people that are there right now, it could happen to any of them at different times or places, and they don't know. Just imagine living every day when you wake up, you're thinking, well, is this the last day of my life or my family's life? They don't know. It's that bad. I mean, it is.
It is that bad, because we were very much like America. We didn't even have fences around our houses. A lot of people didn't lock their doors. They kept their windows open at night, because it's an extremely hot country. They didn't lock their doors when they went to the store, etc. But slowly but surely, after 1994, these things crept up on us. And I do believe that South Africa was the blueprint for the rest of the world, where they tried out all these things to see if anybody would object. And since nobody has, they are now rolling it out through the rest of the world much quicker than they did it in South Africa. But having only been out of South Africa now 6 years, I can tell you how things progressed. So you put a burglar bars on your windows, and you still got robbed. So you put a fence around your property, and you still got robbed. So then you put up an 8-foot wall around your property, and you still got robbed. So you put electric wiring on top of the 8-foot wall, and you put in an alarm system, and you put in security gates, and you had a mobile unit like ADT connected to your alarm system that would come and help you if the alarm went off. And you put security gates that closed your bedroom area off from the rest of the house, so that if somebody got into the house, they couldn't get into the bedrooms. But this happened over such a long stretch of time that you got used to it. So you'd get used to the burglar bars, and then you'd get used to the wall. And then you had to put electric gates in, because as you pulled up to your gate and got out to open the gate, they would attack you. So you put electric gates in, kept yourself locked in your car until the gate shut behind you. You don't go into your house if your dogs are not outside or not around, because you know your dogs have been killed and somebody's probably waiting for you in the house. So these things crept up on us slowly, until you start considering that to be normal life. And when I got to America and realized what fear South Africans live with every moment of every day, it was kind of an awakening, because you get used to it. You lock your doors. You scurry into the supermarket. You scurry out of there. You keep an eye around. You've got eyes in the back of your head. Your eyes are on swivels. You're scared all the time. And one of the major things missing, this was a story written by an American friend of mine who went to visit South Africa. And he came back and he wrote the story, and it still makes me cry to this day. He said he was walking through the street, down the street in Johannesburg, and he couldn't understand what was missing. There were car sounds, there were traffic sounds, there was people shouting, but something was missing. And he walked past a park that was totally devoid of people and realize that the sound missing in South Africa is the voice of children playing and laughing. Because you do not let your children even play in your own backyard. They are locked inside all the time.
This is really living like a prisoner.
Absolutely.
You know, and not just a prisoner, but not just like what you would call a federal prison or a Club Med prison. This is like living hardcore, because even your children, your family, and everybody is subjugated to fear, imprisonment. It's really unbelievable.
It is. Noreen, I don't think that anybody can even begin to understand. You need to listen to one of Lauren Southern's videos on her imprisonment.
Okay, hold your thought, Karen, and we have a break now. So stay tuned, people. We'll be right back with Karen Smith.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Hey everyone, it's Barbara Jean Lindsay, the Cosmic Oracle. If you have questions about your past lives or future plans, need answers from the cosmos about your love life or career, or just want to keep your finger on the pulse of the planet, check out my show, The Cosmic Oracle, here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
It is no secret that the so-called mainstream media is best described as controlled propaganda. Countless news stories are either totally ignored or spun with half-truths, and because of this, essential facts and vital information are often compromised. Join Dr. Ott every Friday night on Studio B at 10 p.m. Eastern and learn why The Story Behind the Story was nominated for a Peabody Award in its second year of producing unparalleled broadcasting excellence in 1997. That is, if you really care about learning the truth.
Wadiya will remain a dictatorship. Or be quiet. Why are you guys so anti-dictators? Imagine if America was a dictatorship. You could let 1% of the people have all the nation's wealth. You could help your rich friends get richer by cutting their taxes and bailing them out when they gamble and lose. You could ignore the needs of the poor for healthcare and education. Your media would appear free, but would secretly be controlled by one person and his family. You could wiretap phones. You could torture foreign prisoners. You could have rigged elections. You could lie about why you go to war. You could fill your prisons with one particular racial group, and no one would complain. You could use the media to scare the people into supporting policies that are against their interests.
Tune in Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, for Liberation Nation with Deacon John, where America comes to hear the truth.
I know this is hard for you Americans to imagine, but please try.
Anti-aircraft guns went into action against unidentified aircraft in the Los Angeles area shortly after 3 a.m. Pacific wartime this morning.
We are far stronger than we were 10 weeks ago.
General Quarters, all hands man your battle stations.
You're nervous, mount your toes. I'll do the mastermind around here. You who have not seen it do not know what hell looks like from the top.
Bam, check it out every Tuesday and Saturday on Revolution Radio. It's a double dose of the internationally recognized renegade military historian Douglas Dietrich.
You'll stay right where you are till I tell you to move out.
Yeah, that's right. Tuesdays from 10 to midnight Eastern Time. Join Douglas Dietrich as he exposes the truth in hidden history on his show Critical Omissions. And then our human weapon of mass destruction is back once again to take your calls on Saturday Night Firing Lines. Both from 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Only on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome back to Well Done Heart Roundtable or show with Noreen Helphand. And tonight, as usual, has been very compelling with my guest that I have on tonight. It's been informative but very tragic, the situation in South Africa with the persecuted white population. Before I let Karen speak, and she can also mention her website and other organizations related to the situation. Her site is www.radiofreesouthafrica.com. And anyway, Karen, yeah, I know, you had that even back when you had your show on the station. And then there's also, I guess we should announce the one that Lee Oxley still has, and that would be the South African Family Relief Project. Do you want to announce?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. South African Family Relief Project. I will talk about them in a moment when I talk about the white camps. But I was saying before the break that you really should listen to the videos put out by Lauren Southern on her return from South Africa. She came back last week or the week before, so it's a very recent thing, and she's busy doing a documentary right now. But her impression, I was almost in tears listening to her saying how horrific it is to feel the fear in the air. She spoke to black people, she spoke to white people, she spoke to government people, she spoke to all kinds of people. And she had gone there with a very different impression and came away stunned. For me to see it through somebody else's eyes is an amazing thing, because as I say, we got used to it. So these things increased and increased and increased in intensity, but you didn't notice so much until you were away from it. But to hear it through a Canadian's eyes who's never lived in that kind of circumstance was like reliving it all over again. And you really should listen to her or to Katie Hopkins, because they were horrified at what they found. And I'm very glad that the world is slowly but surely paying attention.
Yeah, I see their names come up on sidebars, and I've looked into some of that. So I think definitely people are looking at it.
Yes, it's a really good thing. One of the guys, Simon Roche from Saintlanders, did a tour in America, and he spoke on Alex Jones and a whole lot of places. Mm-hmm. So there are more voices speaking about it than just my little one crying in the wilderness. And it's such a relief to me because it's a very long, hard, lonely, sad journey. And to have to look at these things, in order to speak about it, I have to look at it every single day. And I speak to South Africans daily. I interview them. I talk to them. They cry on my shoulder. They ask me to help them to get out of that hellhole. And so it takes a huge toll on you, on you spiritually, emotionally. It is a very difficult road to walk. So for me, it's kind of a relief to have other people talking about it as well, and not feeling that I'm fighting this silence of the worldwide media, fighting it on my own. There have always been people like Sunette Bridges, Steve Hoffmeyer, Shah Granger from the UK. There have always been other people speaking out, but there wasn't a long-running radio show, etc., like I was trying to do, and it was taking an enormous toll on me. So I'm very, very grateful to the people who've listened, who've spread the word, who've spoken to other people, who've written letters to their congressmen. I am so grateful to see that people are beginning to pay attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Statistically, I mean, I don't know if you or anybody, in your network or that has been following and tracking statistically how many more people are either paying attention to the information itself through media and or donating and or involving themselves. So since last year, have you noticed, what your estimate has been, of course, an increase, and how much approximately, and what do you think of the numbers increasing?
The numbers have increased exponentially. I can't even begin to tell you, but at the same time, since December, we have not had one donation to South African Family Relief Fund.
Really?
Not one at all.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but is it because of that situation with accounts, or I know there's that involvement, but you can speak about that or this, or if they're separate or conjoined issues, or however?
I think that the problem is that every country has got so many problems of their own. Europe is being overrun by invaders, all young military age invaders. They are trying to do the same thing in America. President Trump gave great hope to the people, but it doesn't seem that he's going to be able to fulfill his promises due to the quagmire in Washington. And I don't want to speak badly about my adopted country because I am really privileged to be here. Sure. And it is 500% better than the country that I come from. Mm-hmm. So I never want to speak badly about this country that has treated me so well and given me the opportunity to be a voice for the South African people that were voices. So I'm very grateful to be here and very, very proud to be an American citizen. But this country alone is facing horrific challenges. And I understand that people want to see their own country progress. And the money that they have, they're giving to their own country, to their own veterans, to their own homeless, to their own children that are suffering. Mm-hmm. And I understand that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's breaking my heart because there are safety nets in this country for people. Right. Whereas in South Africa, there is nothing for the dispossessed white people. There is nothing.
Yeah, so let me just say this to the American listeners or whatever country, not picking, me and Karen, like she said, I'm American, we're not picking on Americans. Really, if you don't mind me reiterating, I think what you're saying is the world government, including America, has its own problems creating, and we're a divided country anyway, we don't have to get into that, but the governments are creating issues and problems and divisions and all kinds of stuff within our own country plus internationally, and this is across the globe. with many other governments. Well, so it's not just about picking on one government. However, really what she's saying, and I want to say this in my own words as an American, is that, yeah, of course we have to take care of ourselves here because, in my opinion, and I think, Karen, you might understand this, is that America is still one of the, quote, last, if you want to call it free, I know that's controversial, bastions of, free living, so forth, at the moment. And this is not stating that it's going to remain this way. But I think the reason why we have to stay strong is so that we can stay strong for the rest of the world. Now, given that, and that's just coming from me, given that, I think it's also important for us Americans or whoever to understand that even though you have to fortify your own countries, please support South Africa, because what's going on there is a template, as Karen said. This is a total template for genocide for many groups in this world, whites especially, but maybe even others. This template that she talks about is an experiment that's happening right now. It's an experiment happening to these people in that region of the world that is, we've had other things happen, like in all the other world wars, so forth, and communism, and gulags, or and did all kinds of things to people. But this is another example of this in that part of the world right now that we have to make sure doesn't get out of hand, because that will happen. I hate to say it, and Karen knows this too. She's going to probably talk about it. This will happen in other parts of the world. It can happen here, as she stated earlier. So, this is a very broad thing to say, but we got to take care of all the areas where we see massive experimentation on a big level of genocide, especially. We can look at Tibet, South Africa, Europe with the migrant invasion, where they're trying to literally do this in a way where it's not like taking a gun and necessarily robbing or shooting and killing, but in a sense they are in a myriad of ways. We don't need to go into that here. We know this, or hope so. But, it's going to happen here in the United States too, maybe a little bit slower. Okay, but it doesn't mean what's happening in South Africa can happen here or anywhere. I just want to say that. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to go into the worldwide black-white problem and whatever, because that is not my area of expertise, although I have to watch it. Yeah. So, yes, it's very sad that there are no donations coming in whatsoever for these people. I was speaking to Lee this evening, and she says they're literally starving. And she is beside herself, because let me explain who Lee is and let me explain what she does so that your audience understands. Lee Oxley-Dupree is a South African lady who was a hairdresser. She's married to Marius, who was a welder, and they both lost their jobs, and they were living in their car. And some kind people helped them with food, and they discovered one day that they had an excess. So they went to look for other people who needed help. And to her shock and horror, she started to discover how many white people were living in their cars, on the streets, under tarpaulins, in the bush, which is a death sentence in South Africa. If you are exposed, you are going to be murdered. So when they got some, what is called in South Africa, piecework, temporary jobs, she and her husband started collecting money and collecting food and collecting clothes for these people. And then she realized that what they needed was a place to stay. So she got together volunteers. Now, this whole organization, South African Family Relief Project, is volunteer-based. They do not take any money for themselves. The only money that comes out of donations that they use is for petrol for their vehicles.
Which is one of the rare,
yes, it is very rare.
For a charity, I'm not saying they're all bad, but some take quite a bit.
Yeah, they take enormous salaries.
Yeah.
The story that almost breaks my heart is that one Christmas, about 3 years ago, Lee had given a Christmas party for two of these camps on the Natal South Coast, and came home. The electricity had been switched off because they couldn't afford it. So she and her husband's, their Christmas dinner was a tin of tuna and half a loaf of bread sitting by candlelight on the floor. And because they refuse to take as much as a packet of sugar out of donations for themselves, because she says she is the one who has to choose who eats today and who doesn't. She is the one who has to look into the children's eyes and say, the food is finished today. I have no food for you. And she can't do it if she has a full belly and is, that I'm fine, so everybody else must be, that kind of attitude. It has never been his attitude.
Karen, one of the tragic things too about this is all this stuff is not reported at all by mainstream media for a reason, because the mainstream media, as people and alternative media knows, is actually in on the system of genocide. They really are. The more many of us have researched this, they're part of the evil. They want to make themselves look like, oh, we're the good people telling you we're trying to help you. No, they're cashing in and contributing to the evil by being silent, being told to be silent, getting paid to be silent, and they are part of the system of genocide and harm.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And they were part of the problem that turned South Africa over to a communist government and turned that once flourishing country into a begging bowl. The United States, I read this morning and I'm on fire with anger from this. Despite all these things that are happening in South Africa, the United States is giving $308 million to South Africa for aid. Now, they know as well as we know that money is never going to get where it is needed. And it's meant for the blacks, but it's never going to get to the blacks who need that money. It is going to go straight into the politicians' pockets. And it's crazy that given this situation that your Congress know about, they are still giving that amount of money to South Africa every year, your taxpayers' money. So to go back to Lee, as things got better for her, she started this organization called South African Family Relief Project. And I'm going to tell you a very sad story. Noreen, you've probably heard it before, but it is such an indicator of what the government thinks of white people in South Africa. She was looking for white camps. We call them informal settlements because in South Africa, a squatter camp is actually a government-designated place. It is a squatter camp. There are dozens of black ones, and as of last count, we think 480 white ones with 1 million plus people in them. Over 350,000 children are in those camps. But these are not government designated. As far as I know, there are only 2 government designated white squatter camps in South Africa, so that they have got plausible deniability. They can say it's not happening because there are only 2 camps. But the informal settlements are the ones that they are not looking at. So a bunch of white people had gotten together at an abandoned caravan park, which had ablution blocks, showers, toilets, some electricity, and they had formed a settlement there. They'd been there for about 10 years. They had vegetable gardens growing, and they had a small cottage industry going, and they were doing as well as could be expected under those circumstances. Well, when the government discovered this, they decided that those people must get off that land because the government needs it for some unspecified purpose, and the people must go within 24 hours. So Sunep just took them to court, and the court case carried on for a couple of years, but eventually the government won. These people must go. In the meantime, the government had shot themselves in the foot because they had passed a law saying that if, say for instance, you're on vacation, and some squatters move into your house while you're on vacation. If they've been there more than 24 hours, you cannot evict them. You have to go through a very long, expensive court process in order to evict them from your home. So you come back from vacation, they're in your house, you can't get them out, you've got nowhere to live, they've taken over your home and all your possessions, bad luck you're having. So the government passed a law saying that if you did manage to evict them, you had to supply them with an alternate place to live. So they had to apply that same law to themselves when they emptied out Coronation Park. So what they did was they told these 300 families that they could go and live at Munseyville, which was a recently closed garbage dump, which had not been compacted or reformed in any way, grass planted, nothing like that. It had just been closed. And on top of this garbage dump, they put up corrugated iron houses, which were 4 walls, a roof, and a door, no windows, and no floors, because they were told you cannot have permanent structures there, because at any moment we may move you on. So these corrugated iron houses were perched on top of this filthy garbage heap, and there were 3 water supply points for these 300 people. And no toilets, and no showers, and no electricity, no nothing.
Wow.
These elderly people and children, sick elderly people and children, were moved into this place. So you had old people sleeping on a mattress on top of this mulch. And the first night they were there was the most horrific storm.
Oh, no.
And rain poured through the roofs, and these people were hip deep, literally hip deep, in garbage. Now, syringes, tins, broken bottles.
Oh, my goodness.
Medical waste, all the other things they were in. And some of the houses were blown away because they were perched on top of this heap. Mm-hmm. They were blown 2 blocks away by the wind. So Lee got to hear about this and went in and fought the local council to put floors in on these houses. And she was refused. And she asked to build a retaining wall to stop the water rushing through the houses when it rained. And she was refused. And she asked if she could put up a building for a schoolroom for these children. Because in South Africa, you pay school fees. You don't have a school bus like you have here. So you have to get your own transport to school. You don't get lunches or breakfasts at school. You bring your own. You pay for your books. You pay for the schooling. You wear a uniform, which you also have to pay for. So if people don't know where they're going to put their head that night, much less what they're going to feed their children, they certainly can't afford to get them to school every day. So these children are not being educated. An entire generation of children, it's now going on to 2 generations because it's 25 years, are not being educated. They have these helpless, hopeless, blank stares in their dirty faces that no child should ever have to have. So Lee moved in there and put floors in the houses, and she put up a makeshift school for these children, and she planted grass, all with donations from the international community, because there are not enough white people in South Africa to support the growing need for these kind of places.
Yeah, I want to remind the listeners to please, we'll talk a little bit about how they can donate, despite whatever issues you've got with your setup, because it's very important, what time is it right now? Let me see. Oh my goodness. We only have about half an hour left of the show. I'm going to speed things up a little bit here, Karen.
Okay.
Only because I really want the listeners, wherever they are in the world, to try to donate to this cause. So let's just for a few minutes here focus on that, because I think people got the general help how the situation is going with the system as well. If there's anything needed to be known about that, because for myself I wanted to know, and I'm sure people want to help. So please go and inform all the details about this situation.
Okay, so you cannot send goods to South Africa. Right. We had some really good Australian and UK people who sent container loads of clothes, food, and things to South Africa. What the South African government does is they don't let you see what's in the container, and they slap their tax on it. So they tax the one container 70,000 Rand, which of course the charity cannot pay. And they take the goods away. They confiscate the goods. So sending goods to South Africa is impossible. Mailing things to South Africa is beyond impossible, because the post office is always on strike. or being burnt down, or your mail is stolen. It is impossible. So the only solution is to give them some money. Now, with the exchange rate as it is today, it's 13 rand to the dollar. So $5 goes a very long way in South Africa. So never ever think that, well, I can only afford $2. It's not going to help. It is going to help. Okay, so South African Family Relief had a PayPal and a bank account, which the ANC recently froze. So they had a lot of money in the PayPal, which they have not been able to get and will not be able to get for another 6 months, because their account is frozen, because they do not cater for 80% Black people. And until they can prove they're doing that, they cannot get money.
So basically what you're saying is that way in which, because I remember some of us did that last year, whatever you talked about it, that way to donate through that the site, the South African
her website, yes,
is not, she can't access it.
Well, we found a short-term way around that, but I'm afraid that the government is going to find out. So I'm not going to be too loud about it, but we have a way that if you donate on my website and say that it is for South African Family Relief, I will get the money to them.
Okay, so remember to repeat that one more time. It's through your Radio Free South
Africa.com.
That one, and then when you make the PayPal payment, correct?
Yes.
To that, you put a note saying this is for South African Family Relief. Okay.
Yes, because I also help a bunch of South Africans that are looking for asylum status in the USA. They have managed to get here, and they've applied for asylum status here. But in the meantime, they do not have permission to work. They are here legally because they have an application in. But that application to go to your first hearing can take up to 4 years. And in the meantime, they can't work. So if you can't work, you can't support yourself. So I collect and help them as well. I have 7 families that I'm helping. And I also collect for the secession of the Khoi King in South Africa. So you need to put a statement on there what you want the money to go for. And it will go to the correct place. So
that's very important for the listeners to know, because I know that if they don't make that memo, what you're saying is the money will just go to somebody else. Is that correct? I mean,
no. It will. Any money that hasn't got a note on it, I send to Lee's charity.
Okay.
Any money. If it's not specifically allocated for asylees or secession, it goes to Lee, because they are in dire straits right now. So Lee eventually decided that her dream was to buy a farm. And on that farm, they would take people out of the squatter camps and they would reskill them in skills that are needed in South Africa. For instance, welding, because there is an enormous need for security gates and burglar bars. They would reskill these people, make sure that their children were seen to, pay them a small wage while they were there, feed them, clothe them, and reskill them. And in a year, help them either to get into a job with another white company or set them up in a business where they could then employ the next year's people through the farm. Well, with great help from international donors, we managed to put the deposit down on the farm and are, by the skin of our teeth, keeping up with the mortgage payments right now.
Wow.
He has put up 5 houses, a kitchen unit, a bathroom unit. They've got ducks and goats and chickens and a vegetable garden going. They have rescued so far 2 lots of people, but they are going to lose the farm and everything they've put into it if they cannot pay the mortgage. And it's getting that desperate.
So please, listeners, again, I don't usually repeat things on my show too often, but seriously, of course, our station needs donations, and that. Oh, by the way, I already did my promo. So yes, donate to our station so that we can have guests such as Karen discuss these topics, but also to her and Lee Oxley's cause, because this is really, we've been talking for this for a while, but this is really a crucial time right now where they need a lot of support. So yes.
Yes, because we are coming up to the elections in South Africa. Now, This is a very, very tense time in that country. And I have just read, this is what I said at the beginning. I was going to tell you something that I have read today. Yesterday, the ANC went into a meeting yesterday afternoon. They finished the meeting at 3 a.m. in the morning. And they have finally told President Zuma he has got to step down.
Mm-hmm.
He has got to step down because his fraud and his corruption and his corrupt buddies and his crony system has got the FBI and the British intelligence investigating the government in South Africa for corruption. And the exchange rate has dropped so badly. The rand is worth nothing. International companies are leaving in droves, which puts more people out of work, and so on. So they've been saying for a couple of months now that this man needs to step down. Today, they told him he has to go. Now, he is demanding amnesty from all his crimes because he knows that once he steps down, he's liable to be taken to court for all 800-odd crimes that he's committed, plus a whole bunch more. And he's refusing to step down. But they want to put Cyril Ramaphosa in his place. Now, when that was said, the whole of South Africa took a huge sigh of relief and said, well, it can't get worse. Now, let me tell you about Cyril Ramaphosa, who is now supposed to be the next president of South Africa. If he doesn't get murdered first by the EFF or Blackland first. But anyway, he, 25 years ago, was a little nobody, worth nothing. He is now one of the richest men in Africa.
Wow.
In 25 years that the ANC have been in power. So you understand that nobody gets worth billions of rand in 25 years without really a job or a company behind him by legal or good means. And he came out and said he is going to back the ANC's cry for confiscation of land. That means they can take your farm, your business, your residence, your car, your bank account, your furniture. They can take it away from you without any compensation whatsoever because they said so. And that rule was voted for by the ANC at their last meeting. So that is about to come into effect as
the
well.
ANC sounds like a complete terroristic dictatorship. I mean, it just...
Well, Ramaphosa has said that he backs that. He backs the BBEE laws. He is not going to bring an end to affirmative action. He is going to speed up the process of taking the land back from the whites. So there is going to be absolutely no change. Whether Zuma goes or Zuma stays makes no difference whatsoever, except that Ramaphosa is a very well-educated man and apparently got a standing ovation at the World Economic Forum, where President Trump was recently, because he can talk. He can sweet talk anybody, that man. So I do not see that anything is going to improve. In fact, I believe it's going to get worse. And because the elections are coming up, there's going to be an incredible amount of violence, and it's all going to be directed at the whites. The EFF want more power. The DA, which used to be the Liberal Party that whites voted for, they have also come out and said that they are firmly behind BBEE. They're behind the confiscation of land. The whites must go. But at the same time, if you want to leave South Africa, to try and get the paperwork you need out of that government is an unbelievably difficult task.
Yeah, this is a trap, you guys. This is a human trap, what's going on there. And if people are thinking that it's easy for these people just to like leave the region, that's probably also extremely difficult because they actually enforce borders, I'm sure, in these various countries. So it's not like, okay, I'm just going to leave Cape Town area or South Africa or Johannesburg, and I'm just going to go up towards way, way up north with my family. But that's not that possible. Yeah.
No. Firstly, if you live in one of those camps, you don't have a vehicle. You don't have money. You don't have a suitcase, It's an impossible task, and you are surrounded by black countries in the same state as you.
Yeah.
If you look what happened to Rhodesia, that was the breadbasket of Africa. It exported hundreds of tons of food every year to the rest of the world. They are now eating rats. And the military deposed Mugabe, their dictator president, recently, and are still doing the same thing. They asked the white farmers to come back, and I read today that the new president is saying we are not giving the white farmers their farms back. They can come on a 99-year leasehold and teach the blacks how to farm, but they are not getting farms back.
I want to say this too to the listeners that if any of you out there think that, well, this is just white colonizers that were British, Dutch, or whatnot, who oppressed, colonized South Africa, therefore they deserve to be friggin' like killed and raped, murdered, and killed. Yeah, sure, forget it. I'm not interested because they deserve it. Think again about what's really happening in this world. History is not necessarily all what you think. I mean, okay, maybe some white people that colonized South Africa, oppressed or hurt some black people. I don't know. I mean, but that's not even, to be honest with you, the scope of what's going on right now is a very targeted thing, because I don't believe that the early white colonizers of that area, from what you told me and what from my researched myself, that they how can I say that they they had their issues, but this is not a perfect world. So of course there was maybe some injustices, but I don't think that they came down there just to like rape, murder, rob, rape, and murder any black person in their way and just say, hey, okay, this is the way it is. You guys are all dead, and here we are. I mean, yeah, they did make something out of a land that was not. It was somewhat sparsely populated, from what I read, in terms of black populations, and they came in and okay, so they established areas. But to say that this is a karmic justice, this happened to millions of people that are being threatened right now to be, robbed, raped, and murdered in this manner, is an eye for an eye. It is not, okay? You do your research, people. It's not. I just have to say this because you do know, Karen, I know you heard it a million times where people think, oh, this is just a karmic justice. It's not. This is injustice. But anyway.
No, it is totally. I had a piece here that I would. There is time. I would love to read this to you. It came from a German book written in 1988. So it's referencing 1988, which was the apartheid era, and they're telling facts about South Africa, and the Germans didn't really like South Africans too much either. So you must understand that this was a guy who did not have an axe to grind. Mm-hmm. He says in 1972, South African blacks owned 360,000 vehicles. The monthly income of blacks per capita in 1988 was $352 rand per month. But in Malawi and Mozambique, which are surrounding black countries, it was 20 rand a month. Black people could undergo a complicated heart valve surgery for just more than $1, while black Americans had to pay $15,000. In a Pretoria hospital, between 2,000 and 3,000 of these surgeries were done per year, a black hospital built by white people for the black population that we were so supposedly treating so badly. In 1970, black workers earned 1,751 million, or 25.5% of the total wage fees in South Africa. And at that time, we were treating them badly and not letting them work. During the apartheid years, the black population grew, and apartheid only lasted about 48 years. The black population of South Africa grew 920%. Now, if we were killing them by their thousands and treating them as badly as the world would have you think, why did the population grow so much?
And not to mention, again, this bears repeating, the white population is, look, whether they did some of this in the past, probably not on this scale, if at all, to this great degree. But currently, in the last half century, they have not, persecuted blacks in the same manner as the ANC and the Black Bandits and so forth are persecuting people right now.
No.
There's no equivalent. This is what I'm saying. Yeah.
No, there is absolutely no equivalent. No. Noreen, the things that people have been taught about South Africa are wrong, because in 1652, when Jan van Riebeeck landed at Cape Town, he was not there to colonize. He was there to build a way station for passing ships of the Dutch East India Company. But the only people in the Cape at that time were the Khoisan, the Bushmen. And they were little nomadic groups that moved in family groups. There were no black people. It was 150 years after Jan van Riebeeck landed at the Cape that the Khoisan and the whites first came in contact with African black people. So the story that the blacks are being fed today, the whites stole your land and you need to steal it back from them. They need to give it back to you or you must take it by force. That story is totally a fabrication. Wow. But the rest of the world, not only black South Africans, but the rest of the world believe that fable as well. So my job is 50 times harder. Yes. Because I have to teach the whole history of South Africa before I can explain why we are where we're at today.
I have a question from somebody that kind of segues into what you're saying. Well, obviously, the person asked if you felt that the Illuminati was behind this. I think we already kind of covered that earlier about New World Order agenda. So, yes, I'm going to answer that for you. But specifically, she was asking about Christians being targeted, but also in relation to that, because Africa has a lot of ancient religious systems, not only Christian and Jewish, but tribal. Do you feel, Karen, maybe there's something to do with religion or symbolisms of ritual murder, ritual
yes.
things? Okay,
yes,
all right, yes.
All right, so about 3 months ago, a black man went into a police station carrying carrying an arm in his hand. And he put the arm down on the policeman's counter and he said, "You have to help us. We are tired of eating human meat."
Wow.
So the police went to his village, and the village of about 300 people had been eating human beings for the last 20 years. There was a pot on the fire that had human ears in it. Now,
let me. I missed something. I hope the listeners heard it. This man was black or white or?
He was a black man.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Tribal. Okay, or something.
Yes.
Whatever.
So you're talking about tribalism.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So the witch doctor has extreme power in South Africa. They are called sangomas, and the witch doctor. Well, recently the parliament 6 of them went to consult the witch doctors to get some more power for the upcoming elections.
Wow.
They have immense power. The government, the ANC government, has equated them and given them legislatively the power of a doctor who studied for 7 years and become a doctor. They can write sick notes for people. The kind of sick note they write is his blood was too hot, so he couldn't come to work. Now, what they do is that they have told the black population that the cure for HIV/AIDS is sex with a virgin, which now equates to a white baby.
Wow.
So they are kidnapping babies to cure AIDS, and they are kidnapping children to sell their body parts to make what they call muti. It's a medicine that they produce.
See, I gotta say this. This is not what Karen's talking about right now, you guys, is not insanity. This is happening globally too, by the way. The abduction of children, using them for ritual purposes, whether it be sexual, blood, organs. And what she's specifying here is also reality in this region of Africa and relating to this whole situation. But go ahead now.
Yes. So, your children are not safe. And South Africa has become the world hub for human trafficking. It's the biggest AIDS positive group of people, country in the world. Per population, we have more AIDS positive, HIV AIDS positive people. And the clinics are not getting the drugs that are kindly sent by the rest of the world to deal with this, because they're being hijacked by the government and sold on to other countries. So they're being donated by kind countries to treat this outbreak. But you have cannibalism. You have witch doctors with incredible power, and yet the government will tell you it's a Christian country. So, it is barbaric. It is absolutely barbaric. They go to the witch doctor you will find pamphlets on every street corner. Come to the witch doctor for penis lengthening, for more money, for revenge on your lover's lover. But come to the witch doctor. They get put on your cars in the malls if your car is parked there.
See, this is why there's no, what do you call it, consciousness of like, well, we screw over our own people for these reasons and results. And, you get the governments that have a slightly different attitude, but it's like, hey, we'll use whoever, and white people will just wipe them out and use our own population for better or worse, or it's just all like a crazy, insane situation on all levels.
But Noreen, a Western person who has never been to Africa, or even who's been on holiday, for instance, in Cape Town and gone to the tourist spots where it's relatively safe, although even that is stopping, they cannot even begin to understand the African barbarity. It is part of their culture. It is who they are, and they do not want to change. They are proud of who they are.
Yeah.
So, it's frightening.
Well, also, let me see. Also, in conjunction with this, the other racial populations, like the people from India, China, or whatever, I'm getting the feeling, Karen, that even though right now they may have some, protections and so forth because of their status, and also the power that they're wielding economically and so forth. But my feeling is once their day is done, they're not going to fare. I mean, I don't wish this on anybody, but they can't see themselves as being special because right now they're in a better position. I don't see other people ascending to like permanent, safety mode ever in this country. So I'm going to make a very, very unconventional announcement to anybody who happens to be listening to me who is of, and I'm going to specify this because this is the superpower, well, one of them right now. That's the Chinese. I'm just being very broad here. Could be anybody of that level of anywhere. Okay, if you're rich, investors, industrialists, Chinese people, whoever, listen to this. If you're in South Africa right now and you're doing well, maybe collect what you can and plan on eventually leaving. And I would even suggest do not even immigrate to there for any long term, because you think that just because you're not, quote, white, that this can't happen to you. I disagree. I think that it can. It looks like it can happen to anybody. So if anybody who's not white and thinking about going there to investing or is there right now, really plan on not going there, not living there, and or have a plan to leave while you can. That's all I have to say.
Well, Noreen, the most scary thing is that for some time now, they have been discussing putting up nuclear power stations. So there is huge argument. I don't know who's telling the truth and who's lying, but part of the government says they've signed a deal with the Russians to build 6 nuclear power stations, and the other part of the government is denying it explicitly. So I don't know. Who knows what is true? But we do know that they met with Putin's people. They met with the energy people from Russia as part of the reason that is being stated for Zuma not wanting to step down, because he has promised Putin that these will be built there. So But that is all rumor. I cannot substantiate it. You can read it up on it for yourself. There are two.
Well, what do you think
very
the
different
Russians
types.
have to gain? What do the Russians have to gain in this situation?
Did they or did they not buy 20% of America's uranium?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they did. They also bought a Zuma-controlled uranium mine in South Africa.
Yeah, so Russian, Chinese, whoever, be careful what you're doing there. And this has all become an economic, political game. And
it's a huge mess, Noreen. And the longer I look at it, the worse it gets, because there is just so many facets of this story. I mean, can you imagine 6 nuclear power stations in the hands of these people?
No.
It is a recipe for disaster for the entire world. And yet, nobody is paying attention.
Well, we are paying attention to the nut job in North Korea, which is one thing, but there's a lot of craziness here that's not being looked at either.
Yeah, Noreen, I don't know. I can tear my hair out at the number of things that are happening in South Africa that I can't even touch on. I could sit here another 2 hours and still not have even touched on half the problem.
Well, you're going to have to come back again. It's been, way too long since you've been here. And I want you to come back a little bit more regularly if you can, because this is not something that, because realize there's always new people listening that don't know about this, right? You know that. And it's just something that can't be talked about enough. So, yeah.
No, it can't, Noreen, it can't. Because the situation there is so volatile right now. They're talking... There was a tape put out also by Katie Hopkins, I think, one of the Blackland First people, saying, one of their top leaders, saying that the only solution to this is civil war. We have to take the land from the whites by force. Now, more whites have been killed in that country in the last 25 years than you have lost soldiers in your war zones in that same period of time.
Wow.
And so it is a war zone in a peaceful country, with only one target, white people. And it is, I know, if that makes me a racist because I'm talking about the problems inflicted on the whites by the government, then I will take that label gratefully, because I can tell you that the blacks are suffering as well. I've told you about their unemployment rate. I can tell you about the fact that they're not getting educated, that they leave high school, they can't read or write or do simple arithmetic. I can tell you all of those things. But for me, they are the majority. They are protected. They are the ones doing this to the tiny minority. And somebody has to step in and protect those people.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant that, just because whites were colonizers, I was saying earlier, therefore this is fine. No, it's not. It is not okay.
No, because I asked this question, Noreen. Were my family colonizers? No, we were not. We were born in South Africa, 4th generation South Africans. Did we have slaves, or did we badly treat the black people? We did not. So why must I pay for the sins of my forefathers?
This could be true globally, you guys.
Yes.
This is really important. This is very, very important on a global reason, because people are being blamed for all kinds of stuff right now. And really, you guys, look beyond the superficial. Look at the roots. Look at the root causes of all these geopolitical problems, issues, and sufferings of peoples all over the world. Is not necessarily just because, you look this race, you have this much money in your pocket, you're this or that. It's really deeper. This stuff goes deeper, and you can't just blame the superficial reasons. You dig deeper in all these things.
And I would advise your listeners, if you have a strong stomach and if you have any doubts about what I've told you tonight, Google farm murders in South Africa.
Very important.
And look at the pictures.
Yes, I have.
You will be sick at what these people are suffering before maybe they die. Maybe they're lucky enough to die. Because I have interviewed survivors. And I tell you something, the suicide rate among white men in South Africa who have had home invasions is huge because they cannot live with themselves, that they cannot defend their families, and that being their main task in life. So go and have a look and see for yourself the horrible things they are doing to these people. And ask yourself, does anybody deserve that? Does a baby deserve to be boiled alive? Does a baby deserve to be wrapped in newspaper and put in the microwave? No.
So this is, not to sound morbid, anybody who doubts me, I don't care. I'm going to send them these videos. Karen, this is just the kind of person I am. I'm fed up. I will do it. I have no, reservation about doing it because people, when I doubt it that much, look for themselves. And if they think that's just fake, I don't know what to say because it isn't.
No, I don't know what to say either, Noreen, because nobody deserves that. Nobody, no matter what you have done. If you're a murderer, a serial murderer in this country, you get a trial, you go to jail, you have appeals. These people do not have that. They find them waiting in their house when they come home from work, and they're held there for 3 or 4 days and tortured to death. Nobody deserves that, no matter what their forefathers did.
Yep, and the mainstream news doesn't, well, you know what? Guess what? If there is a karmic hell or purgatory or whatever to be paid, these news outlets, I'm sorry to say, will pay the price.
Yes, because this blood is on their hands.
It really is. Just as much as the perpetrators, you know that? If you think about it.
Yes,
it's crazy. It is.
You are condoning it. By keeping quiet, you are condoning it.
Right.
And that's why I am so outspoken. Through ill health, through...
Oh, yes, you have your own health issues. It is, I'm being told that there's music playing. Okay. Yes, so I know we can't hear it on my end, but thank you, my friends, for telling me so. Okay, so as we wind down here, I want to thank you, Karen Smith. And please come back again. And your website is Radio Free South Africa. And then donate to South African Family Relief Project. I'll put those in the chat room again. And come back again. This is Noreen Helphand at Wild at Heart. Come back again, Karen, okay?
People working
Thank you so much, Noreen.
Food on the table and
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Don't get me wrong.